The Barrett M82 weighs 30 pounds. Fully loaded, it's a weapon that demands respect, training, and strength most people don't possess. So when SEAL Commander Jake Brennan walked across the scorching Coronado beach and placed it directly into the hands of the blonde woman sweeping shotgun shells, every operator within earshot stopped what they were doing. Because commanders don't hand off 50 caliber sniper rifles to cleaning staff. Not ever. Not unless something had gone very, very wrong with everyone's assumptions. But that moment was still 20 minutes away. Right now, the training range hummed with controlled chaos. The sharp crack of gunfire echoed across the sand as SEAL candidates ran through live-fire drills, their instructors barking corrections over the noise. Spent brass glittered in the afternoon sun, scattered across the beach in wild patterns that would need clearing before the next rotation. That's where she was. Blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, late 20s, dressed in faded khakis and a gray base contractor shirt. A wide push broom in her hands, methodically sweeping brass casings into neat piles. Her movements were efficient, controlled, almost meditative. She didn't look military. She didn't carry herself like someone who mattered. Which is exactly why Lieutenant Marcus Webb decided she was the perfect target. He stood near the equipment trailer with two other junior officers, both grinning as Webb's voice carried across the sand. "You missed a spot," he called out, his tone dripping with condescension. The woman didn't look up, just kept sweeping. Webb's grin widened. He nudged one of the others and walked closer, boots crunching on shells. "Hey, I'm talking to you." She paused, glanced up briefly. Her expression was calm, unreadable. "I heard you." "Then maybe you should move faster," Webb said, crossing his arms. "We've got operators waiting to use this range. Can't have you taking all day picking up trash." One of the other officers laughed. The woman's gaze held Webb's for just a moment longer than he expected, something in her eyes that should have been a warning. But he missed it completely. "I'll be done when I'm done," she said evenly, returning to her work. Webb's face flushed. Around them, a few SEALs had started to notice the exchange, but no one intervened. This kind of hierarchy enforcement happened all the time. Junior guys getting humbled. Support staff reminded where they stood. "You know what your problem is?" Webb said, stepping directly into her workspace. "You don't understand how things work here. When an officer tells you to move, you move." The woman stopped sweeping. She straightened slowly, her posture shifting in a way that was almost imperceptible, but somehow changed the entire dynamic. "And you don't understand who you're talking to." Webb scoffed. "I'm talking to someone who cleans up after real operators." Silence rippled outward. More heads turned. The woman didn't respond. She just held his gaze, that same unreadable calm, and something about it made Webb push harder. "What? You think you're special?" he said. "You think because you're on a naval base you're part of something? You're not. You're support. You're invisible." "Marcus." The voice cut through the tension like a blade. Sharp, controlled, and carrying an authority that made everyone within range snap to attention. Commander Jake Brennan stepped out from behind the equipment trailer, his expression unreadable, but his presence absolute. 45, weathered by 2 decades of operations most people would never hear about. When he moved, people noticed. Webb straightened immediately. "Sir, you were just what?" Brennan asked, his tone dangerously quiet. Webb hesitated. "Clearing the range, sir. Making sure things stay on schedule." Brennan's eyes shifted to the woman. She hadn't moved, hadn't reacted, just stood there with the broom in her hands like none of this mattered. "You know who she is?" Brennan asked. Webb glanced at her dismissively. "Contractor, sir. Range cleanup." Brennan's jaw tightened. He walked forward slowly, deliberately, until he stood directly beside the woman. Then he turned to face Webb fully. "Lieutenant, do you see that Barrett over there?" He pointed toward the rifle case near the firing line. Webb nodded, confused. "Yes, sir. Go get it. Bring it here." Webb's confusion deepened, but he moved quickly, jogging to retrieve the massive rifle. He carried it carefully, the weight obvious in his grip, and returned to stand in front of Brennan. "Now hand it to her," Brennan said. Webb froze. "Sir, you heard me." The beach had gone silent now. Every operator, every instructor, every candidate watching. Webb extended the rifle awkwardly toward the woman. She took it without hesitation, her grip shifting instantly, automatically, into a carry position that was so practiced it looked effortless. And that's when Webb's face changed. When the confidence drained and something else crept in. Because she didn't hold it like someone unfamiliar. She held it like someone who had fired it 1,000 times. In places most of them would never see. Brennan's voice was quiet, but it carried. Lieutenant Webb, meet Chief Warrant Officer Ava Reese. Naval Special Warfare. Sniper Instructor. 14 confirmed kills over 1,000 meters. The words landed like physical blows. And the woman you just told to move faster? Brennan continued. She was sweeping her own brass. The Barrett felt like an old friend in Ava's hands. The weight, the balance, the slight imperfection in the stock she'd wrapped herself during a deployment 3 years ago, it was all familiar. Muscle memory snapped into place as she shifted her stance subtly, redistributing the rifle's 30 pounds like it was nothing. Lieutenant Webb stood frozen, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and the first creeping edges of humiliation. Around them, the rage had gone completely still. Conversations died. Movement stopped. Because what Commander Brennan had just said didn't compute with what everyone had been seeing for the past 20 minutes. That's impossible, Webb said finally, his voice tight. She's what? Brennan interrupted, his tone colder now. A woman? Blonde. Does it look like your idea of a sniper? Webb's mouth opened, then closed. He had no good answer. Ava finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. It's not impossible, Lieutenant. It's just not what you expected. She turned the Barrett in her hands, checking the chamber with practiced efficiency. You assumed contractor because I wasn't wearing a uniform. You assumed unimportant because I was doing manual work. I didn't, Webb started. You did, Ava said simply. And you weren't alone. She glanced briefly at the 2 other junior officers who had been laughing with Webb moments earlier. Both had gone pale, their earlier amusement replaced with the sick realization that they'd just mocked someone who could outshoot anyone on this beach. Brennan stepped forward. Chief Reese has been running sniper qualifications for this command for 2 years. She holds the base record for long-range accuracy. And she was clearing brass from her own training session because she doesn't ask her students to clean up what she won't. The words settled like stones. Webb's voice came out smaller now. Sir, I didn't know. No, you didn't, Brennan said. But you should have asked before you assumed. He turned to Ava. Chief, you want to make a point? Ava considered for a moment, then nodded once. She looked at Webb. You said operators were waiting to use the range. Yes, Webb said carefully. Then let's not waste time. She turned toward the firing line, scanning the targets downrange. Commander, the 1,000-meter plates still set? They are, Brennan confirmed. Ava walked toward the firing position, her movements economical and precise. She set the Barrett down on the shooting bench, adjusted the bipod, and dropped to one knee behind it. No hesitation. No theatrics. The SEALs and instructors began drifting closer, forming a loose semicircle behind her. This wasn't training anymore. This was a demonstration. Ava pulled a small notebook from her pocket, flipped it open, and studied the wind flags downrange. Her lips moved silently, running calculations. Then she chambered around, the metallic click sharp in the quiet. Winds gusting southeast at 12 knots, she said, her voice carrying. Temperature 91 degrees. Humidity 63%. She adjusted the scope, shooting uphill at a 7-degree angle. She settled into position, her breathing slowing visibly. The Barrett's massive barrel steadied. Then she fired. The concussion was enormous, the sound rolling across the beach like thunder. Downrange, the 1,000-meter steel plate rang with a clear, unmistakable clang. Direct hit. She didn't pause. Adjusted slightly. Fired again. Plang. Again. Clang. 3 shots. 3 hits. At a distance most riflemen couldn't even see clearly. When she stood, the Barrett still smoking faintly, there was no pride in her expression. No showboating. She simply safed the weapon and turned back to Webb. That's what a sniper looks like, Lieutenant, she said quietly. Even when she's sweeping shells. Webb's face had gone from red to white. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Brennan stepped in. Lieutenant Webb, you're dismissed. Report to my office at 0600 tomorrow. Sir, dismissed. Webb left quickly, his 2 companions trailing. Behind him, none of them making eye contact with anyone. The remaining SEALs stayed put, the atmosphere shifting from tension to something closer to respect. One of the senior instructors, a grizzled master chief, approached Ava with a slight grin. Hell of a shot, Chief, he said. Ava nodded. Just doing my job. Brennan crossed his arms, watching Webb's retreating figure. He's young. Stupid. But he'll learn. Or he won't, Ava said, picking up her broom again. Either way, the range still needs clearing. Brennan let out a short laugh. You don't have to do that. I know, Ava said. But I started it. I'll finish it. She returned to sweeping, her movements the same as before, calm, methodical, unbothered. But now, as she worked, no one walked past her without nodding. No one dismissed her as invisible. And when one of the younger SEALs moved to help her collect the brass, she didn't stop him. Because respect, once earned, changes everything. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the Coronado beach as Ava finished sweeping the last section of the range. The brass clinked softly as she dumped the final dustpan into the collection barrel, the sound almost peaceful after the chaos of the afternoon. Commander Brennan had stayed. Not hovering, not supervising, just present, leaning against the equipment trailer with his arms crossed, watching the ocean in that way operators do when they're processing something. When Ava walked over, wiping sand from her hands, he straightened. You didn't have to make an example of him, Brennan said. I didn't, Ava replied. You did. Brennan's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Fair point. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the distant sound of waves filling the space. He'll report tomorrow, Brennan said finally. I'll make sure he understands what happened. Why it matters. Ava nodded. He's not a bad officer. Just young. Careless. You're more forgiving than I'd be. I've seen worse, Ava said. And I've been worse. Early in my career, I made plenty of assumptions. Someone corrected me. Hard. That's how you learn. Brennan studied her. You really don't care that he dismissed you? Ava shrugged. People see what they expect to see. I stopped trying to control that a long time ago. She glanced back at the firing line. What I care about is whether they listen when it matters. Whether they adjust. And if they don't, then they don't belong here. Simple. Final. Brennan let out a long breath. The younger guys are going to ask about you now. Want to know your record. Your deployments. Let them ask, Ava said. Most of it's classified anyway. They'll ask anyway. Ava allowed herself a small smile. Then I'll tell them the same thing I tell everyone. The work speaks for itself. The rest is noise. A young SEAL jogged up, breathless, holding a radio. Commander, Ops Center needs you. Priority call. Brennan took the radio, listened briefly, then nodded. On my way. He handed it back and turned to Ava. Duty calls. Always does, Ava said. Brennan hesitated, then extended his hand. For what it's worth, Chief, you handled that better than I would have. Ava shook it firmly. You handed me a Barrett in front of 50 people, sir. That's not nothing. You earned it long before today. He laughed, and Ava stood alone on the beach, the wind picking up as the sun dipped toward the horizon. She could have left an hour ago, could have let someone else finish the cleanup. But that wasn't how she worked. She bent down, picked up one last shell casing she'd missed, and dropped it into the barrel. Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned to find Lieutenant Webb standing several yards away, his posture stiff, uncertain. Chief Reese, he said, his voice tight. Can I speak with you? Ava studied him for a moment, then nodded. Go ahead. Webb took a breath. I was out of line. Disrespectful. I made assumptions I had no right to make. He paused. I'm sorry. Ava didn't respond immediately. She let the silence sit, watching him, not to punish, but to see if he meant it. Why? She asked finally. Webb frowned. Why what? Why did you assume I didn't belong? He hesitated, clearly wrestling with the answer. Because you didn't look like anyone else here. And that made me less? No. He stopped. Started again. Yes. In that moment, it did. And that was wrong. Ava nodded slowly. You're right. It was. She picked up her broom, resting it against her shoulder. But you came back. That counts for something. Webb's shoulders relaxed slightly. Commander Brennan's making me write a formal apology. And I'm on extra duty for 2 weeks. Good. Ava said simply. Webb blinked. Good. You made a mistake. You're facing consequences. That's how it should work. She met his eyes. But here's what matters more, Lieutenant. Do you understand why what you did was a problem? Because you outranked me, Webb said. No, Ava corrected. Because you judged someone's value without knowing anything about them. Rank makes it worse, but the root problem is deeper. If I had been a contractor, would that have made it okay? Webb went still. No. Then, that's the lesson. Ava adjusted the broom. Everyone here has a role. Everyone here matters. The moment you forget that, you stop being a leader. Webb nodded, the lesson clearly sinking in. Understood. Ava turned to leave, then paused. Lieutenant. Yes, Chief? You've got potential. Don't waste it proving you're the loudest person in the room. Prove you're the smartest. Webb straightened. I won't forget this. Good. Because I won't either. She walked away, boots crunching on sand, the broom over her shoulder and the weight of the day finally lifting. Behind her, the range was clear, the brass collected, the work done. 3 months later, Lieutenant Webb would request sniper training. Ava would be his instructor, and he would become one of the best shots in his class, not because he was naturally gifted, but because he learned to listen before he assumed. But that was still ahead. For now, Ava walked toward the parking lot as the sun touched the ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. She didn't need recognition, didn't need validation. She had the work, she had the skill, and she had the quiet certainty that came from knowing exactly who she was, no matter what anyone else saw. That was enough.